now we will listen to Felicia from Örebro Universitet, and we are going to listen to sludge instead. And it's about this identification and levels of side chain fluorinated polymers in sewage sludge from Sweden. So Felicia Fredriksson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I will try to share the screen. Let's see. So let's start. Thank you for having me here. And today I will present some results from our pilot study, where we investigated the occurrence of 2 newly identified compounds that are suspected to be side chain fluorinated polymers in sludge from Swedish wastewater treatment plants. And at first, I will quickly give a short background about PFASs when it comes to the differences with non-polymeric and polymeric PFASs. I also will give a brief introduction regarding these 2 specific compounds that we have investigated in this study. So, briefly, as all of you know, PFASs are a large group of man-made compounds. They are used in a wide range of industrial and commercial applications due to their beneficial properties. They have been seen to global distributed in several matrices, which this picture below shows. And here you can see just a few from many studies monitoring PFASs in wildlife, water, air, sediment, and even humans. And all these studies seen in this picture measuring the non-polymeric PFASs, also called disinfectants. The main focus today is in this class of compounds, where only a handful of studies have been on fluorinated polymers. So if we go to this picture here, you can see this class up here. Can you see the laser point? Hopefully, yes. So this is the group that are mostly studied at the moment, where we have the sulfonic acids, the carboxylic acids, and over 4,700 PFAS-related compounds have been identified on the global market. And of these 1,000 of compounds, around 15% belongs to polymers. So fluorinated polymers have shown to increase rapidly on the global market, and actually a high quantity of these polymers is not characterized. Therefore, would I like to draw away the attention from this group up here towards this groups, especially the group highlighted in red. So if we go just a short definition of what polymers are. So fluorinated polymers are generally that they are a large molecule, including 1 or more monomers containing fluorine. They are PFASs if they contain perfluoroalkyl moieties, fully fluorinated monomers. So to the right here is one of the most well-known fluoropolymer, and it's called PFTE. I think a lot of you guys know it as Teflon, and this monomer here is repeated in its backbone. But unlike fluoropolymers, side chain fluorinated polymers has a different structure, and you can see a structure here where you have a non-fluorinated backbone, and on this non-fluorinated backbone, side chain fluorinated polymer side chain are attached to this backbone, and these side chain is per or polyfluorinated. And side chain fluorinated polymers are potential precursors to other PFASs, and a high proportion of commercial PFAS products belong to this group, which indicate their importance. So if we go back to present study, 2 specific fluorinated compounds were investigated. These compounds have been or are used in commercial products of the brand Scotchgard. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar to Scotchgard, but it's a trade name of 3M company for surface treatment products. These fluorinated compounds that have been identified in their impregnation sprays are used as the active ingredient in the product. Their chemical identities are a trade secret of 3M, and therefore the structure not yet determined. But what we know so far is that the formula used before 2002 and the new formula used after 2002 contains different compounds. They are suspected to be side chain flourinated polymers, and I will hereafter refer to these compounds as pre-2002 for the compound used in the formula before 2002, and post-2002 for the compound used in the formula after 2002. A recent study identifying the differences between formula also stated that a C8 chemistry was used for pre-2002, where they identified the side chain, this part, to be ethylated fossa. They also stated that the formula after 2002, post-2002, is a C4 chemistry. And these statements correspond to the phase out of PFAS-related compounds that they phased out, 3M company phased out PFAS-related compounds at 2002. The same research group that identified the differences also have seen detectable levels of these compounds, both pre and post, in soil and sediment from North America, and they have also found them in biosolids from wastewater treatment plants in Canada. So if we go back to this study, the motivation of this study is that we have seen several studies observed large proportion of unidentified EOF, and especially one report from 2060 identified up to 98% unidentified extractable organic fluorine in sludge samples. And since most of the environmental research doesn't focus on fluorinated polymers, as I mentioned in the beginning, our thought was that side chain fluorinated polymers may explain this unknown part in sludge, where we at the first stage wanted to see if these novel Scotchgard compounds can explain this unknown part. So we divided the project into 3 different topics. And the first one is, as I mentioned in the motivation, could these compounds explain the high levels of unknown EOF? The second part is to try to optimize an extraction method for these Scotchgard compounds more suitable for them and see if we see these compounds in Swedish environment. They have been seen in North America, but have we used them here in Sweden? And the third part was to apply a fluorine mass balance to assess the unknown part by analyzing these 2 novel compounds. So I will quickly go through some results from each part. If I start with the first one, could the unidentified EOF be explained by these 2 suspected side chain fluorinated polymers from previous study? And the short answer is no, they couldn't. And we tried to reanalyze the sludge sample extract from previous study, and both pre and post were not detected. And the reason for this was because the extraction method used in previous study didn't extract these compounds, so it wasn't optimized for these compounds. So therefore, we went to the second objective. We wanted to optimize the extraction method for these compounds. We wanted to evaluate if these Scotchgard compounds are present in Swedish wastewater treatment plants. So what we did was to use sludge samples collected at 2015 from 4 wastewater treatment plants. And these sludge samples selected are the same samples included in previous study in order for us to do a comparison in EOF levels and also the levels between compounds. So to extract these compounds in sludge, different extraction methods were tested, and I will not go through it, but difficulties occurred during the optimization of the extraction method because of both these compounds pre and post are strongly adsorbed to particles, so it was quite difficult to extract these. But in the end, the best recovery was made by using hexane and acetone as the extraction solution. So here is some of the results from the pilot study. And here you can see the sludge samples from 4 different wastewater treatment plants. And you have the wastewater treatment plants here. And all of these are collected at 2015. And the concentration is in nanogram per gram dry weight. And the blue bars represent pre-2002, so the compound used in the formula before 2002. And the red bars represent post-2002, so the new compound used after 2002. And we also have enlarged post-2002, so you see the concentration easier. So as you can see here, pre-2002 is always higher in concentration compared to post-2002 in the same sample. Around up to 10 times higher is pre compared to post. And these results is in contrast with a recent study measuring these compounds in biosolid from Canadian wastewater treatment plants, where they detected levels of post to be always higher than those of pre in the same sample. The differences might suggest different uses and sources between Sweden and Canada. It is interesting also that we see so high levels of pre compared to post, because pre-2002 have been phased out since 2002. And the reason of these high levels of pre is still unclear. To look a little bit closer to the results and also compare the levels between wastewater treatment plants, all wastewater treatment plants except one has quite similar levels. If you see here, both Umeå, Bergkvara, Henriksdal has quite close to levels for pre, except Gässlösa, and the same results could be seen for post. And the reason for this is still unclear. One speculation is that Gässlösa wastewater treatment plant receive wastewater from textile industries, which is different from the rest. And as I mentioned in the beginning, during the introduction, these compounds, both pre and post, are used as an active ingredient in impregnation sprays for textiles. So it could be one speculation why we see these high levels in Gässlösa compared to the rest. I also want to show you the results from previous study, where they analyzed 83 ionic PFASs in the same sample as present study. So the table here represents the previous study where they're measuring 83 ionic and neutral PFASs, and here is the sum of these. And below here you can see the sum of both Scotch-Guard compounds in present study, but it's the same sample. So if you look at the levels, we can clearly see that pre and post is much higher than 83 other PFASs or equal to 83 other PFASs. And this shows the importance to measure these compounds in sludge. And it also suggests that a significant proportion of fluorinated chemicals are overlooked in the environment. And the third and last part I wanted to present from our pilot study was to assess the unknown part by analyzing these novel compounds. Could these compounds explain the unknown EOF in present study? So this is the fluorine mass balance for present study, presented with the sites with the wastewater treatment plants here to the left, and the EOF levels is in percentage. And as you can see, a large proportion of EOF remains unidentified. Up to 98% is unidentified. And if I enlarge this picture here to the left, the Scotch-Guard, you can see the Scotch-Guard compounds, how much they account for. So it's actually a minor part, up to 2% of the EOF. And this is actually not that surprising for us. As mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, more than 4,700 PFAS-related compounds are on the global market. And we know a large proportion belongs to polymeric and side chain polymeric products. And this study, we only measuring 2 of these. So it's not that surprising that they only account for 2%. So to sum up this presentation, I wanted to go back to the motivation of this study. So as I mentioned, the high levels of unidentified EOF from previous study couldn't be explained by these 2 suspected side chain fluorinated polymers. Previous study focused on neutral and ionic PFASs, whereas present study extraction method was optimized for these suspected side chain fluorinated polymers. Therefore, represent present studies EOF levels more than non-polar long-chain polymeric PFASs or even monomers breakdown from polymers, whereas previous represent ionic and neutral organofluorine. The fact that both studies observed large proportion of unknown EOF may indicate the fact that significant proportion of fluorinated compounds are overlooked in the environment. And by that, I have the conclusion here. And what we have concluded with this study is that a large amount of both pre and post were found in sludge samples when we compare it to other PFASs. We found them in all of our samples, and also in all sludge samples that I have detected or measured so far, we have seen these compounds. Pre-2002 have been phased out since 2002. The reason for the high levels of this component is still not clear. I also want to mention large proportion of EOF is still unknown, and present study together with previous study indicating a large unidentified part in both ionic and polymeric PFASs. And by that, I want to just mention that at the moment, very few data on these compounds and polymeric PFASs are available, and further investigation is needed to understand their existence, characteristics, fate, and transport in the environment. So if you thought this was interesting and wanted to look further in the results, you can see it in the Swedish EPA report. And by that, I would like to thank our funders and my colleagues and you guys for the attention.